Hello, everyone. You can hear me in the back as well. Good. Everything's cool. All right. So the topic is digital twin, and we will start by explaining what that is because it's a relatively new term. We used to call this BIM for FM when we started 10 years ago. And we like the new term more because it gives us an opportunity to work outside of the AEC industry to get the other folks to also to understand what we're trying to do. First, about the company, we've been around about 10 years. I met my co-founder at CFTA in 2008 at USC, and this is the first project we did at the University School of Cinematic Arts, building that Spielberg and Lucas gave the money to the university, and they built a $200 million complex of several buildings. And that was one of the early versions of the university having the BIM model. That was the 2006, 2007 when they got it. And they started trying to figure out what to do with it. They said, well, can we do Navisworks first in the cloud through the Internet Explorer or whatever? So they started having all kinds of trouble. So Chuck Meese, who is also here, and I and a few other people met with the university, and they decided, all right, so we will try to build something new. And at that point, I was exiting my previous construction software company that I co-founded. So I said, well, let us build something for you that will be cool. And fortunately, since then, we were working with the globally well-known brands. I will show you some of the case studies today, also campus owners. From Sydney Opera House to BMW and many others. So digital twin again. I took this. Somebody told me yesterday. He said, "Well, digital twin, everybody understands it differently." I said, "Well, I took my definition from Wikipedia, so at least I have some authoritative source." So it's a digital replica, and it's a virtual copy of the real assets, and it's an integration of multiple technologies. All of them are, the Internet of Things is obviously an important component of that, but let's not forget CAD, BIM models, FM data, and any other information, all created together for using this information for different use cases. What kind of use cases? That's something that you will define for yourself. So for example, Anna Thiemer will use it for total cost, lifecycle cost estimation. Some airport owner will use it for the risk management. Some other client will use it for something else. And we will look at some of those later. So to get you guys a little bit excited, I will start by showing the Sydney Opera House digital twin within EcoDomus software. So it's not just about 3D. Remember that it's about the ability to search information and get information to show you something. Like in this example, the client says, well, let me find some space. G534A, they typed in. They found that it's the actually central corridor here. And now they're saying, okay, so I understand it's this corridor. So what do I know about this corridor? Well, we're saying in our database, we can pull in some data. So on the right side, I see, show me all of the assets or components that belong to that space. Fine, now show me attributes of that space. Show me the documents that are associated with that specific space. Show me the work orders and other issues with that space. Show me the temperature, show me humidity, show me how many people are in that space. So all of that information can be collected and demonstrated in some easy to understand matter, right? So now we're saying, okay, let me fly into that space. Let me look around like in a computer game, like all of these different shooters, right, that our kids are playing. So now I want to see what this asset is. I clicked on this lighting fixture. It tells me, all right, so this is the lighting fixture number, whatever it is. These are the attributes. As you notice, some of the empty Kobe fields that they were trying to probably use the Revit plugin that we usually recommend against using because it's a piece of crap. And some documents that you can associate with that object. Fortunately, no issues recorded. But something that they still need to add effects. Where is the panel board and where is the circuit to shut off that lighting fixture? I'll show you later how the others are doing this. Now, I noticed that there is a flag for this object. So what's happening with this box? First of all, what is this box? Well, this box is the key watcher box, and they see that there's a broken handle. So somebody created an issue for that ticket-specific box, right? So now I'm understand what I need to do with it. Okay, so what else do I have in this corridor? So as I'm moving down in 3D, you see that in the upper left corner, I also have the 2D map. So I can actually jump between 2D view and 3D view at my leisure. So whatever is easier for me to navigate. I jumped down one level into my boiler and chiller room and went back up. And now I'm going towards the concert hall through the probably the artist entrance. So I'm in my concert hall. One thing I noticed is that not all of the layers are activated. So I've just turned on my furniture layer with the chairs, and now I can inspect if somebody spilled the coffee on the chair in the first row, and the third on the left, I can select that chair and send an inspection team to clean up or maybe replace the fabric on that chair. They actually do that because the cleaning, I was asking earlier, cleaning is actually a lot of money because you do that manually, so you need to pay people. So even if it's not maybe a fancy thing like a chiller or boiler or pump oil replacement, but that's where a lot of money is spent on the operation and maintenance. Now let me see what's happening with my Internet of Things. Right, so I'm walking into the mechanical room for the upper house, and I selected my variable speed drive, and I want to see what my Honeywell is showing me for that object over the past couple of days or a few hours, and I see my real-time data showing me what was, obviously this is the demo data, they didn't let me to use real-time data, but this is how they can compare now the actual data set versus the baseline. One of the things that people talk, when they talk about IoT and the SCADA, how it's supposed to run, right? So the model, information and energy models can give you the idea of, this is supposed to be, let's say, between 700 and 800 CFMs. So if your, let's say, BAS says it's consistently at 790, consistency is good, right? But maybe it's not good if it's running at 90% of its capacity, right? It's going to be exhausted soon. So that's where the utilization can be helpful. What else can we use this database for? I'm actually sometimes talking about the benefits of doing this, but I noticed that what works better is scaring people. So when I go in, I say, did you hear about that Atlanta airport fire last year that shut down for 2 days? Or did you just see, this was actually a screenshot from chaos at LA airport that was like 3 months ago, right? So I'm just saying, you know why? Because nobody actually tracks their sub-networks and electrical networks well. If you go into any maintenance department, you will see a paper drawing about their electrical systems. And so if there is some short circuit, people will try to first understand where it happened, and they could have predicted it. Like Divan was showing earlier, they're capturing faults, right, using the fault detection and diagnostics. Technology is there already. So you can put the sensors on those networks, they can capture it, how to actually predict it. Technology exists, so we can just visualize it, and it can be done in 2D as well. So what I was saying, the digital twin, yes, it gives you a 3D component, it's nice, but sometimes a single line diagram like here, it's also pretty useful because here you can understand interrelationships of, this is the interactive 2D line diagram. So you can click on any of those panel boards that are here, it will take you to the BIM. Or you can stay in 2D if you want. Like here, this is the schema for one of the projects we do in Switzerland, right? So here you see this, this value is pulled in from BAS, but this valve is connected to the asset. So I'm clicking into, and I see my Revit attributes that I imported for this asset. And if I want to see it in 3D, it takes me to the 3D model, shows me where that object is in 3D. Or some other use cases, plumbing leaks, planned utility shutdowns. We did this case study at Stanford University's medical office building. We worked with Microdesk, I think, and they did some research on the utilization of the technology. We observed that there's significant hours saved with these workflows, and that's where you actually get cost savings and you have the impact. One of the things is evaluating not just how much time it's saved per work order, but what if goes on for 2 hours instead of 1 hour. Depending on the building, it may be, the impact may be much more severe than just savings that you have. And it's relevant actually to different types of structures. When we started, it was only universities, healthcare probably. Now it's called all kinds of structures: wastewater treatment plants, factories, bridges, oil and gas. So it can be applicable when we talk about the campus. Don't think it's only for the main big buildings. It can be for anything. In terms of the benefits shared, for those of you who are interested in return on investment calculations, there is a good book published about 5 years ago by IFMA called BIM for Facility Managers. I was involved helping it a little bit on the return on investment calculations with Paul Teichels. British guys who are spending millions of pounds on what government gives them. US government obviously is cheap, but Brits are doing a lot of work. They have good analysis on the costs, savings, etc. So we can share it with you. So fortunately, there's plenty of articles and case studies written over the past few years. So if somebody says, well, my management wants to see real numbers, there are articles about that. How do we approach that now? Let's say this was the kind of an end result, right, what I showed you. How do we collect the data? So that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the most difficult part, is actually getting the data into the format that would help you to utilize that. We're saying it's not just construction to FM workflow. It actually starts even when you don't have the building. You start with the design plan validation. So you build your asset requirements or asset information model requirements. And then our role really in this environment is to validate the accuracy of that data. In construction stage, we continue to support that by validating the availability of the information that subcontractors and subconsultants are providing to the overall asset information model creation. And then throughout the handover to the operations, you need to validate that the operation is correctly presented to the client, enter it into their various legacy systems, right? And then continue to be maintained. I will talk about maintenance of the data, especially because nobody does it. And then we pass this to the renovation and upgrades, right? So the cycle repeats itself. So that's what, again, it's a British term, common data environment. It's not very popular yet in the US, but that's what everybody else besides the US is calling it, a CDE. It's the environment where they manage data throughout the life cycle of the building. So the models also, let's remember that the models we're talking about, every type of a supply chain participant is using different type of a model. Designers use design models, construction use construction models, and operators have their own models. These are not the same set of files. They need to be adjusted for each of those parts within the environment. So, and this facility model in the end is something that is continued to be updated. So here's an example of one of our clients, Howard Hughes Medical Institute. You see here all of their projects and all of the renovations were tracked in the same Revit file as phases. So they can always go back and see what changed when, how. Yes, they are not a huge institution. They about maybe 2 million square feet total. But you know, they said it's a highly sensitive environment, so that's why they had to track every single valve because that's important for them. But I'm sure that it can be useful for many other organizations as well. So that's how their model looks like. And why they do it? Because they said, I want to know, their VP of facilities said, I want to know every single valve, what is it for? I want to know, I need to maintain delta T temperature in some areas, in some locations, less than half degree accuracy. So that's what they can do right now. So based on the design intent values, they can compare it with the actual data because we connected with Siemens Apogee. And they can now understand whether design intent and the actual data are close or not close. So what typically we have, what we are facing when we are working with some of the clients, we worked with Modulus on the project and some other, what we see is problems with the owners not specifying in detail what they want. They will just say, give me a COBie file, or even if they say what exactly they want to say in the COBie, they don't specify who collects it and when collects it and how they will validate it and what happens if the information is not accurate. Because even the contractor may say, mea culpa, yeah, I couldn't give it to you, thank you, sorry. So some owners, like Corps of Engineers, they have special penalties set aside for that, but I didn't see many others who also penalize their providers for that. And schedule delays every single time. Usually you have, I will give you your as-built, don't worry. This final as-built arrives maybe a month or two after the project is over. All of the subs left, they got paid. There's no way you can get any information from them. And then you start cleaning that data because data is in poor shape, and that takes a few months more. So when you come back to the owner, it's been 8 or 9 months, and say, hey, wait a minute, you told me that BIM is going to be improving my handover process. It's actually making it worse because, yes, I'm getting more data and it's a high quality, but it's again about a year after we started using this facility. I already entered all of that manually. So what I'm gonna do with your nice clean data set? So these things are caused by the schedule problems. So we helped to establish this, what needed to be elected, when, how. We're trying to push it to be done during the project. So, and it happens, sometimes works quite well. We worked with Pepper, for example, at NDI. That project was a success. We like to brag about it. It's Indiana Health. So it's all doable. It's not like, oh, it's rocket science. No, it's going to work. So we try to explain that, yes, there is the BIM projects, but not all BIM projects are created equal. You definitely have differences between what kind of information is collected and how it is being collected on the proper projects. So in order to validate that information, we suggest you guys develop asset information requirements. This is one of the examples, not the best example, but at least it's from US government agencies, so it's not something that is very sophisticated, right? It's pretty simple asset information spreadsheet. So what we can do here, we can create and we can repeat the same hierarchy structure within EcoDomus to establish the rules that they set aside in their Excel file. We create it in the database way, right? So we're saying, yes, these are your disciplines and your categories. These are your standard fields that you want to collect. And this is the structure. Like, let's say for pumps, you want these fields, fine. For valves, you want other fields, fine, right? Plus, you specify what kind of documents you want and at what stage. So all of that gets algorithmicized, right? So you now can send a query and say, well, show me what is it that we're missing and whether even the value is it in the acceptable range or not. So let's say you specify that voltage can be only 110 volts and 220. So if it's 550, you're like, hey, wait a minute, why is it so? All right, so this QC is what definitely helps you to clean up the data. So for example, Anna wants to check, let's say, cost fields, because each asset may have 3-4 different cost fields. Are they populated or not? Are they acceptable in terms of the range, right? So this is kind of how we can validate that information. You can also build your ad hoc filters and queries. I like this because the BIM becomes your reporting engine. So let's say you're saying, show me all the VAV boxes that cost more than $200. Even my 6-year-old daughter can, she's actually 8, sorry. So she can build this kind of a formula because you just select the fields, specify the values, run it, and you get the result from your BIM. And in addition to these kind of reports, you can run them in 3D. You're saying, okay, show me those VAV boxes. Here they are. Show me the objects that have been installed and commissioned in January. Here they are. So it becomes your day-to-day tool to analyze the data. Okay. And so in addition to the metadata properties of the object that you can query, we need also to understand how to query the data related to the documents, right? So we obviously the most valuable is the metadata of the assets, but each asset may have cut sheets, O&M manuals, photos, etc. So in this case, we also have a built-in document management system that allows you to query those properties and find the necessary documents instead of searching inside of the documents, right? And those documents can be linked to obviously to the BIM elements. So we have the typical document management functionality like check-in, check-out, markups, redlining, PDF links. Like for example, you have your PDF uploaded here, and now I can specify that this door is actually supposed to be not here. So I linked a BIM object to my PDF drawing. Customizable workflows. standard thing like business process model, navigation, issues management. This is something that's actually quite popular over the past 2-3 years. A lot of contractors are using 3D issues using packages like BIM Track, Revisto, etc. So we have this feature the same. So you can highlight the elements. This can be useful for the model maintenance. So let's say you as an owner, you have a bunch of files, the BIM files, and then you notice that no, this fan is supposed to be not here, but maybe 3 meters to the left. So what you do is pretty much doing this. You select this fan. You're saying, here's the BIM coordination issue. You take the markup. You're saying, move it to the right. And it's associated with this issue, sent to the right person, maybe exported as a BCF, and then consumed in the BCF compliant applications like Celebri or Navisworks. So in terms of the integrations, one of the things is obviously there is no application that will do everything. It's impossible from the even software development point of view. So that's why we typically integrate with the legacy applications, like at USC, we integrated with Famous, Honeywell, with Meridian, document side, right? So on the Opera House, we integrated with a main pack, with Honeywell, and a few other applications. At Javits Convention Center, we're doing eMaint, Siemens. So every client has a bunch of different applications. The good thing is most of those applications have web services, so you can always integrate with them, with some of them bidirectionally, with some of them one way. Usually one way is when you pull the data from the SCADA systems because they don't touch their SCADA system. And we're fine, we don't want to touch this. We can analyze the data. On the CMMS integrations, we also use web services. We do about, I would say, 30-40% of our integrations are Maximo typically. But we did integrations before with AssetWorks and Famous, Accruent, and Corrigo. So we map the fields. We do the, again, using API level integrations, so you can jump from, let's say, a CMMS application into EcoDomus. It typically is using single sign-on. So on the campus level, right, so our first attempt was to use the 2D GIS. We started with Google Maps, then we switched to Mapbox because it's a bit more sophisticated in terms of the API capabilities. So here's the Google campus where we worked, one of the buildings. So I can jump from the 2D map into the 3D and then go to the level of individual asset from the bird's eye view down to individual asset view. Now, as I said, we see more of the interest in the 3D. So this is the USC campus, and some of these buildings have models, some of them don't have models, right? And so let's say I picked up this GFF hole and I fly in, and now I'm inside of the building. I can perform building-related functionality. Let's say, show me which circuit and which panel board this lighting fixture is on. And because they properly modeled electrical systems, we can see that through the effects. You see here, I see that this lighting fixture is on the circuit 5 on the panel board H3A. So where's that panel board? Here it is. So I know where it is. Right? So from the big campus view down to individual thing. On the mobile side, you have your traditional iPads and smartphones. On the iPad, you have the ability to do the QR coding or barcoding. It's still more popular than RFID because of the cost. Finding an object and editing its properties, reviewing the documents. Again, the good thing is here you have the integrated back-end database, right? So since your documents are linked to the assets, linked to the BIS, so all of that can provide you with the more complementary view, integrated view on each individual asset. You can create your electronic forms, schedule inspections, and following this inspection, fill out those forms. This is an airport in Saudi Arabia on my smartphone. So I can just select an object here, see that it's a fan coil unit, and say that this fan coil doesn't work properly. So here it is. And so this work order now associated with this fan coil unit goes to the appropriate person. And the Internet of Things. As you know, originally we were talking mostly about SCADA systems. Internet of Things now, including a lot of things that we didn't even talked about a few years ago. Like we have a project right now, we're tracking people in the room. So let's say if there's 2 persons in conference room or 20 people, there's the different way of sending the air specs are different, so you need to know. We have a project with the first responders, firefighters and policemen, who wants to know how people are moving in case of the problems, right? So these kind of things are now tracked with sensors as well, right? So another client is doing the parking lots using the video cameras that they use for the surveillance. They are now tracking how many cars are in the parking lot or how many people are in the room using the same cameras that already installed for the surveillance, right? So in terms of the information models and BIM and GIS, again, you have each element, each thing actually has its own database representation, so you can connect it to all of these different things, whether it's a video camera or stream, IP camera stream, or it's just values from the temperature and CO2 levels. So this can be used for the risk management again, like let's say identifying that CO level goes up, where is that object, where is the shut-off valve, where is the actuator, so I can prevent, let's say, a spread of the smoke. Like in this example, these guys had a problem because they didn't close the dampers. And dampers are not maintainable assets, nobody knows where they are. But in the BIM, yes, they are management. So it's about what you consider managed assets versus non-managed. On the point clouds, the presentation just an hour ago was about different types of scanners. So we merge point clouds with the environment within the 3D viewer environment. So one of the things is actually we see that you don't have to really create a very detailed Revit models for everything. You can create core and shell in a few days for a building like this, and then laser scan some of it using, let's say, Matterport scanners. Merge them together, you got a virtual twin. You can place some of these objects, and I'll show you how you can place them. Let's say here, this is also a new feature. Let's say you have this model imported from Revit, but now you want to track how many people in this room, so you want to place some sensors here. So you can place a cube. This is happening without any advanced modeling in the engineering package. So I've just created a cube. I can adjust it, extend, extrude, resize it. So this can be done even by a person, your maintenance person who doesn't know what BIM stands for, right? So now you place that some 3D object here, you can do another here, and you can link now this object to something from your database. Let's say you created the sensor as an object that was never modeled. Because if you remember, BIM has a lot of things that are excluded. There's an exclusion list, what not to model, right? And usually surveillance sensors, some fire stuff, they're not included. But you can add them if you want later on. And so this becomes your opportunity to create those boxes, place them inside of the point cloud, and there you are. You have your standard stuff, right? Questions and answers. While you guys are getting ready for your questions and answers, I am showing you some, I have 3 minutes left, and I can show you in the meantime some other examples. So go ahead with your questions. I'm just showing you point cloud. Yeah, go ahead.
So for an existing facility that has a CMMS maximum trigger, whatever, you built an asset registry in digital twin, and you're still creating the work order in the CMMS, or you're trying to replace it with your asset registry?
Definitely Maximo is going to be the governing system for the work orders. If somebody wants to create a system here because they identified an object easier than in Maximo, let's say you have a lighting fixture. If you're just looking at the list of assets, it's not easy to understand which one. But if you click on this one specifically, it will trigger the work order that will go into Maximo, and you will clearly see what it is.
And have you created your own naming conventions for the assets?
That depends.
You're doing the same in the other systems as well?
It's supposed to be standardized at the level of the organization. So when the organization creates the asset information requirements, they usually create, this is my standard naming conventions for chillers, for VAVs, for whatever. And so that's what, when we talked about integrations, this is something that every organization has to have in order to, and it's not really a technical issue, it's, somebody mentioned it earlier, it's the interdepartmental problem, having a person from the capital projects and a person, VP of capital, VP of facilities, to agree that they will use the same conventions, the same systems, etc. That's where mostly things happen. Because I have my budget, you have yours. All right, so everybody does my own thing.
About a minute left. I want to make sure you might have any other questions, please
Mhm.
ask, but it's coming close to 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, are there any other questions? If not, I think all the presentations are going to be posted, I believe, on the CFTA website.
Mhm.
So you guys will better get to those. I'm pretty sure Igor will stick around for a little
Yeah.
bit afterwards, so if you guys do want to come up and have an offline discussion with them, feel free. So I just want to thank Igor for his time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
If you guys could please,